Welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here for this session. Before we begin, please silence your phones, and there's no food allowed in the studios. Just required to say those things. Okay, amazing.
Testing.
Hello? Hello? It's on. Yeah. I think I just need to be a little closer. We invite you to enter to win a bunch of goodies by completing our wellness survey and our impact survey. Your input really helps us continue to make this the best event possible. This session is going to be recorded, as you may know, and you can re-watch all Impact Days content soon on the Youth on Record YouTube channel. So yeah. All right, so our panel today is the art of collaboration and building your team. When visibility and demand increases for an artist, navigating the industry requires a strong team. We are here today to dive into curating a strong network and what an effective team provides for an artist. My name is Sofia Young. I'm an independent artist and a fellow at Youth on Record. I'm a part of the current fellowship program there, and I'm the moderator for today. So yeah. All right, we're going to meet our panelists. So we have Sarah Shuel. She is the founder and president of Sonder Music Management, and she's journeyed the music scenes and cities of Chicago, Rome, and Beijing, and probably many more.
A lot.
Yeah, but has found her home in Denver. We are glad to have you here.
Thank you.
Yeah. Woo! Claps. Yeah. All right, we have Kyle Hartman. He is the founder of Future Garden, a talent agency and production company here in Denver. Before creating Future Garden, Kyle was a talent buyer with UMS and Lions Lair and refined his craft of being a tastemaker in the Denver music scene. Thank you for being here. Harlan Kelly. They are a marketing director and project manager for Psychic Hotline, a record label founded by members of Sylvan Esso. In their 10-year industry career, they have worked on Grammy-nominated albums and #1 radio campaigns. Harlan, we appreciate you being here. And then we have Amy Abrams. She is a manager at 7S Management, a boutique management company here in Denver. After extensive education in music management and marketing, she now specializes in estate management for clients like John Denver, Etta James, and Bobby Darin. Thank you for being here. Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. All right, and also, if time permits, at the end of this panel, we are going to open the floor to audience questions. So as I'm asking, maybe think of some things you would like to ask, and yeah, let's get started.
Can I ask a question real quick?
Yeah, 100%.
Since we have a smaller group, how are you all, can I just ask up front, just so we can answer questions effectively and give you all information effectively? Are you all musicians? Are you all working in the music industry, aspiring to be a musician or working in the music industry? Is it okay to ask? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a musician, producer.
Cool. Cool. Great, okay. Thank you.
Nice. Amazing.
Great. Awesome.
Amazing. Yeah, that's great. Thank you for doing that. It's the first day of the festival, so I'm curious about who you all are excited to see this weekend. Whoever wants to start.
Well, I'm partial. One of my artists is in there, Float Like a Buffalo, Saturday night at HQ, 5 to 5:40. But then I'm super excited to see Citra, Ipecac. There's a lot of names I haven't heard of, so I'm excited to check those out and hear of them and get to know them a little bit as well.
Amazing.
I have to admit, I have not made a schedule. I have been so busy that I decided I was going to wing it this year.
That makes total sense.
I'm going to find somebody new and I can report back later.
Perfect.
I also have a number of artists playing, so I'm a little biased as well. We've got tonight 2 DJ sets from DJ Gonzo and Levi W. Tomorrow we've got Naoma on the underground stage. Manana's at the new backyard stage. Dog Tags at Three Kings.
Hell yeah.
And then on Sunday we have Rusty, Neptune's partner, playing on
of a high dive stage.
Amazing.
And then in terms of other artists, I think just discovery is the funnest thing at UMS. So I like to wander and kind of find stuff I haven't seen before.
Totally.
There's a ton of good stuff this year.
Amazing.
Yeah, I've been having fun just like looking at the names on the list already. And I think some of my most fun memories of being at UMS is being at a show and being like, who is this? I love this. Yeah. But I'm also have an artist that I work with who's playing here, who I'm very excited to see, and very excited for so many people I've been talking to about for so long to see, Arena Tropical, who's playing on Sunday, who is amazing. So
wonderful. I'm so glad to have insight into all of your tastes and minds and artists you may represent. We are very, very fortunate to have you guys here with us today. I did give small intros for you guys in the beginning, but I'm curious about how you got your start in the industry, what you began as, and how you got to where you are today.
Okay. I had a pretty non-traditional start in the industry. I didn't go to school for music-related anything. I went to school for journalism and political science. I took on actually Float Like a Buffalo as a side client because the work I was doing in finance and tech just was not fulfilling for me at all. I just began doing more and more and more for them, and in 2019 decided to start my company because I'm good at social media. I'm good at marketing, and I can do those things for artists who might not have those DIY skills and aren't passionate about those things. Then COVID. So we relaunched in March with a whole new set of values, and we've grown the roster to 6 artists at this point. So we're in it now, and we're growing the team, we're growing the roster. So yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I always knew I wanted to do this. When I was growing up in a small Midwestern town, I just wanted to be near the music all the time, but I was not a performer. I didn't really want to be in the spotlight. I wanted to participate in getting the show off the ground, and I was good at organizing and, making phone calls and stuff, and decided really early on that music management was for me. And I went to the program here at CU Denver when it was in its infancy and much less good than it is now. And got a job at working in music management, and have been doing it for 20 years.
Amazing.
So I think I started out really in high school. I started putting on events, and I had a little DJ company with a friend that we ran, and I got into college, and I was also a political science major, oddly enough. And I was a programming manager for my local college radio station. And after graduating, I started volunteering, and I volunteered for UMS actually back in 2012 when it was still owned by the Denver Post, and kind of just fell in love, started working for them and did various roles until I was a talent buyer for them for about 7 years. And then I moved into venue booking and did Lions Lair, as you mentioned, now I book Larimer, Lost Lake, Globe Hall, Bluebird, and I work on Gothic, Ogden, Mission, Red Rocks at AG, and have my little management
Heavy hitters,
company.
yeah.
what college radio station?
UNC.
Cool. Yeah. There was a band that played in my hometown, and that's like a very small town in southern Indiana, and they used to put on shows at one of their older sisters' basements, which was a horrible idea. And those shows were amazing, and they stopped happening because there was just a bunch of high schoolers hanging out in somebody's basement. And I was so frustrated with the fact that this cool thing was happening, and then it stopped happening, that I was like, well, I want to figure out how to make shows happen here still. So my dad helped me with that, which was very cool of him. And that's where I was as I was learning to play music and very much started steering toward, I would prefer to do all these other things than to play music. I like the rest of it around it more than that. So that was my origin story. And I interned at a record label for a long time and did college radio, and had a music industry professor at IU in a music industry class tell me to not major in that, because she was like, you're already doing the things, don't major in this. So I was like, okay. So I was an English major. Yeah.
Totally. Awesome. Well, moving on. Yeah, as an independent artist myself in booking shows on my own currently and through Youth on Record, I think it's a common theme for me to wonder when is the right time to look for representation or a manager or a publicist and stuff like that. So what is the point for artists, do you guys think, when they should be represented or find a manager?
Someone else want to go first?
I can go if you would like.
Yeah.
So I think it varies for different artists. I don't think one size fits all. Some people have different skill sets than other people, and you might be able to manage for a while on your own. But I think eventually the first step is finding a manager who is someone you trust. It doesn't necessarily at first have to be someone with a ton of experience or industry connections. It needs to just be someone you can rely on, is passionate about your music, and can really get you going. And, you know, your team may change over time, but that's kind of a good starting point. I don't think there's a size when you necessarily need a manager. Of course, if you blow up suddenly, you absolutely need a team, but outside of that, I would say no.
Would anyone like to add anything?
Add something. I just want to agree. I think finding somebody who's passionate about what you're doing is one of the most important things in any team member you bring on. And then I also think, you know, when you're feeling that thing inside you where this is what you want to do forever, you're in this for the love of it, you're in this 100%, you don't need a manager if you're not kind of planning to take it as far as you can go with it, in my opinion. Yeah.
100%. And Amy?
I also don't think the manager needs to be the first person on the team. I think that also varies artist to artist. Sometimes you may be able to kind of manage the overall situation on your own, but you may do a campaign where you pay somebody to do marketing or radio or bookkeeping, or, you know, you may bring on an agent first. There are so many different routes you may go depending on the way your business seems to be taking off. And a manager obviously is the hub of a team, and so that person can really help you put together a whole team, but depending on how your path goes, they may not be the first person on.
Yeah, and I work for a record label, and the three of you all are primarily managers. Yeah, so I think I have a little bit different perspective on that, but I think all of those things that you were saying are right, and I'm kind of like an advocate on my end whenever I'm talking to, you know, friends who are artists who are trying to, you know, get that rolling, where I'm an advocate for the label being one of the last things that you add on, because I think that unless it's more of a relationship where you're like a smaller independent label is putting out a physical product in a way that you wouldn't necessarily be doing as an artist unless, you know, they were involved, you don't need a label to operate as an artist or to like spread your music. I still run into this all the time with folks where they're like, you know, not doing anything to really engage their musical community around them except for create music, which is a cool thing to do but unless you are trying to turn your music into a business. And they often are operating under the idea that if a label is brought into the picture, then they will then eliminate the need to get involved in the music community around them. And I think that I'm just like so in favor of getting rid of that idea, because I think labels are much farther along. So I think that like the manager, I think you're 100% right about like it's so different from band to band. And if you're someone too who isn't really interested in like managing a lot of these things, if you like you said, if you're an artist who doesn't feel comfortable with social media, absolutely get someone involved who is comfortable with social media and who like you said is like trust to just like operate without you making those decisions, because they feel comfortable making those decisions and like playing to your strengths of things that you feel either you have connections with or have that you feel comfortable doing, and then finding ways to bring in people you trust who are either good at those things or just feel comfortable doing those things or who are willing to do those things for you. So.
Totally. Thank you so much. Yeah, as we mentioned, established artists usually have a full team surrounding them. It's like a machine almost in a full-blown business for each artist. To help them navigate the industry, I'm curious what you all think a team for an established artist should consist of. What positions or who's facilitating what, and how you play your part in your artist teams.
Do you want okay. I think, again, this probably looks different depending what we mean by established. I think that can have a lot of, a lot of like different definitions at different stages. And it also depends what you want out of your career. Do you want to be a live show driven band? Do you want to be a streaming income driven band? What are your priorities as a business? And then that will impact how you build your team out, the order you build it out, what's important to you. Maybe again, you're passionate about social media. You then don't need a team member who maybe does that. I do think whatever your team looks like, it is important to have that trusted person who's driving that ship, liaising between everybody, and creating that unified vision. I think that's super important to have like a single point of contact, single point of origin, representing your views to all your team members and what needs to happen when.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Do you want to go first? Yeah, I totally agree. I think filling the gaps. I think as you get bigger, there's a couple roles that are pretty vital. Especially if you start making money off a project. I think a business manager is probably the number one, I would say, on the company side for your project, just because there occasionally you'll have a manager or an artist who's really good with finances, but you very rarely.
Yeah.
So I would say a business manager, as you get more established, an agent who has the network to be able to tour, but like she was saying, it depends on if you're a touring project or not. But I think those are kind of the two roles that really you kind of need. And then also a tour manager, of course, if you're touring. And then other roles are kind of more nebulous. And I see different kinds of teams working in the industry. So there's not one size fits all there either.
Totally.
Like operations and promotion, I think, are two little like good pools to think about of like, how am I operating as an artist, and like how does this business of being an artist function, and then like what are my promotions teams in order to like once this is rolling, like to get the ship out of the harbor. I think I'm not an artist manager and have never managed an artist, but a thing an artist manager said to me once, which like has always rung in my brain, is that he's like, yeah, it's our job to make sure the artist doesn't have to go back to coding school, which is like no shade to coding school at all, but like I think it's just important to think about like so many of these promotion tactics and so many of these business tactics of like, am I trying to make my income, creating music? Because I think if you're not trying to do that, that's totally okay, and you don't need to do that to have a really meaningful relationship with music and your musical community. But if you are trying to do that, I think that's those two, like thinking about like what is my team to operate as this music business, this business of being a musician, and then what are they doing to engage teams that promote the music that I make as well.
I think none of us have said in response to this question that if you are, whatever your definition of established is, the manager will be essential, because the manager is the person who is maintaining this team. And I would agree that an agent and a business manager are always employees. Those are people you hire and they work with you until it stops working. But then you have people coming in and out. For every record cycle, you have a record label, and that label may be somebody you stay with for decades, and it may be somebody you stay with for one record cycle. And for that record release, you're going to have radio promotions people, and you may have extra social media people, and you're going to have you're going to be creating new art, and you're going to be, it's endless how many people you're going to bring in for every project. And those people are going to come and go project by project, or, maybe you hire the same people every single time for everything you do, but they still sort of fluctuate based on needs and where you are in your cycle, whether you're, getting ready for a tour or getting ready for a record release or what you're pushing. You may need to beef up your team and then narrow it down when you're in a quiet space.
100%. Would you say, so the manager is managing the other people in your team, and you may have like an agent which would book for you maybe a tour, and then the touring manager under them, and then or
tour manager
alongside.
So the way the tree works,
the spider web.
Everybody is under the artist and the manager.
Yes.
And so the artist is up there at the top, but doesn't really directly communicate with people for the most part. The artist doesn't need to be hiring and firing because that leaves a bad taste in people's mouth. The artist gets to sort of have a cushion. The manager gets to do the hiring and the firing. The whole touring team would be under the manager.
Okay.
And hired by the artist under the manager. Even though the booking agent is booking the shows, they have almost no other involvement in the way a tour operates.
Okay. Yeah. Amazing. Yeah. And then on like a publicist marketing end, that's like a different branch of the tree, and social media all falls under the opposite side.
Right, and so all of that is something a manager would hire and supervise.
Amazing.
Sometimes your record label will have in-house publishing and publicist and marketing people, and sometimes you hire additional to that. And sometimes those are people you have on retainer and they stay with you forever, and sometimes you hire them on a project basis and you work with them for 4 months and never see them again.
Totally. This is very insightful. I am learning a lot.
I'm so impressed how you explained that. I could not have explained that so succinctly, and you explained it so succinctly. That was incredible. Yeah.
All right, yeah, working as managers and marketing directors for many artists, I'm assuming, you've seen the evolution of talent for many musicians. You've developed a keen eye for spotting potential clients, I bet. What do you look for in an artist?
Go ahead, Kyle.
I feel like I've started off the last couple of you.
Let's start with Harlan.
I would say I'm kind of not a person to ask this about artists because I've never done A&R, and I've always kind of like worked the label side of stuff. But I think that with a thing I am doing in the job that I currently do is often hiring teams, like we talked about, like hiring outside teams. And I think it's been especially in the last like 2 years, I've learned a lot about how to negotiate with what a team expects of you and what you expect of the team. And I think that's really translatable to like being an artist and kind of being able to upfront talk about with whatever team you're hiring, whether it's the manager, like whatever person that you're partnering with in your music business, to really have that kind of like understanding that you communicate about with upfront, or if communicating that to your manager, whatever the pathway is. Because I don't think that there's a secret sauce for like this is the artist that's going to blow up or whatever. And I think that in working with so many different artists for so long, I think that a lot of times I'm stepping into an already established ecosystem of the artist and their manager and the teams that they work with. And at large scales and at small scales, if that ecosystem is able to kind of like communicate what they need from you effectively, and you're able to communicate effectively what you need from them, then it's like it doesn't matter if it's big or small. Like you're just going together and working really well together. So I don't think there's like this is the right way to do things, this is how you spot good talent. I think it's about like being able to be on the same page with the expectations with anyone that you're working with.
Totally. Thank you.
Well, I have a slightly different take, but I agree with you on a lot of those points. I think for me, I'm an A&R guy, and I'll see an artist and I'll instantly be like, this artist has the potential to get huge. But I think a lot of times there's kind of two things, and I'm weird because I start with artists who are a lot smaller than I think a lot of companies typically start with. But if you're a company that's looking to add an artist, I think they're looking for someone who has already kind of established themselves and carved out a niche. You're looking for someone who has created their own lane, is doing their own thing, and already is kind of doing the things you need to do to kind of go down the pathway. And then they're adding a team to kind of enhance that and take them even further. You can't, I think as an artist, a lot of artists get into this mindset, hey, I just need to make the music and, somebody's going to discover me and I'm going to make it. But I think that is very rarely the case, except on TikTok every now and again. But it really is, you got to do the work, and then that's going to attract people to you. So I think when it comes to A&R, I look for people where I see momentum or I see something special or they're doing something that everybody else isn't doing, A lot of artists, I think, get into the trap of maybe chasing trends that are currently hot. But by the time you catch that trend, it's going to be something totally different. So you should really be trying to create your own thing, and maybe what's the future going to be,
Totally.
Just inside of that, I think that's especially with the TikTok comment you made, that's exactly what we're talking about and what I was, I think, trying to say too, with being able to find a way to make your own thing that you're doing, that I am creating this art, sustainable for you to be able to keep doing it. Finding the niche, finding the, if you just make music alone in your room, you need to have something else in order to be able to sustain doing that. And if you want the music to be what's sustaining it, it's one thing. And then if you want to have another career and to make it sustainable for you to keep making that music, that is something too. So I think it's a real, all the things that you said are right, because with the TikTok pop off, so much of the times that doesn't become sustainable for that person, because you can't sustain that thing without the team, without the let's turn this into this thing now. Yeah.
You may not have the infrastructure, set up to go where you need to go already. Yeah.
I would argue that having the TikTok pop off is the other thing if you get the team to back you up quickly.
Yes.
Because you had the motivation to be on TikTok working it, and you also had the luck that it went viral, and you have to have a very good and very quick team to turn that into something else, but it's still more than making the music in your bedroom and hoping somebody finds you.
Right. Do you have anything to add, Sarah?
Yeah, I think it's just very important for me when I'm talking to people about potentially working together that they view their team as an extension of the team that they already have as a musician or band. We're not here to take everything off your plate and make you famous by next week. It's going to be a grind for every single one of us, artists included. So I think just having that understanding and making sure that communication and those expectations are well communicated and on the same page is super important. Yeah.
I would also add that in finding the right team, when you're having a conversation with a potential manager, somebody has seen you play live and they've noticed that you've been creating this buzz, and you have a conversation with them about what the relationship might look like. If it doesn't feel like the work you want to do, that's not the right relationship. You have met somebody that totally gets your music but doesn't get your vibe, or you may be the one that doesn't get the vibe of what's needed for the career you want, but it's not the right relationship, and that's the same as dating. You don't jump in on something that's oh, red flags, we don't want the same things. They want kids and I don't,
Totally.
Amazing.
And that actually that leads into my next question, which is, I feel like we touched on it a few times, but what are clear things that artists should be looking for in a manager or a record label? And are there any red flags that you know about that people should stand by and maybe not go along with certain things?
I think if it feels wrong, you should go with your gut and you should consult other people. You should talk to a lawyer or other people in the music industry. Just flat off, that's the first thing. If it doesn't feel right, it's probably not right, or it might not be right, period.
Yeah.
But as far as red flags, definitely. Somebody who's asking you to sign away more than a standard amount and promising you the moon is likely not going to deliver, and you are likely going to be stuck in that relationship. And so the things, the flags to look for are, is this pretty standard, and does it feel really good, and is there a way for me to get out of this if it doesn't work?
Right, yeah.
And then what you should be looking for is that person is so excited about you and gets you and is saying things that feel realistic but also exciting.
100%.
I completely agree with that. I also think you should look for someone who doesn't say yes all the time. You don't want a yes man. You want somebody who's going to be honest with you about your career.
Totally.
Sometimes you have to have hard conversations with your artist, and if you don't have a manager who's able or willing to do that, it can be really detrimental to your career. And then on the label side, and I'm curious to hear your take on this, but I think when it comes to labels, you really need to ask yourself, what is it I'm looking to get out of this label? And do I need the things this label offers, especially in our current era where the scene has just changed so much?
Right.
Yeah, I was going to say the things that they said, like, for me, it's transparency. Like, if, being able to share, if you have have a relationship with a manager, if you have an offer from a label, whatever it is, like, share it with other people like that you trust, so that you can share that information about, like, does this feel like what you know is right? Because I think, and if people are weird, I mean, obviously there's exceptions about like confidentiality and blah, 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 but like being able to share, like, it's like a job, like, offer, like you need to go and find someone, if you get a job offer, who works in that industry and say, does this feel like how much money I should be making for this position, for the work that it's going to take? And I think that same thing translates to artists. And I think that the saying no thing, like, is so important. Like, from being on the outside of it and experiencing a lot of different managers that I've worked with for, in many different ways, having managers that know they can say no to me, but also can push them on things where I'm like, hey, this is why we should do this thing for this reason or whatever. I can see so clearly what managers are able to do that with their artists effectively, and what managers aren't able to do that with their artists effectively. And I think that is again, regardless of the size of the artist, again and again, is how. When I see managers who can do that well with the artist, those turn into sustainable careers where the artist is still going, still doing what they want, or have blown up in this way or that way, or have blown up and no one likes working with them because they have not done that effectively for a long time. So yeah, I think those things are correct.
I want to add to that as an artist, you need to be choosing team members that you trust, so that you will take that advice and you won't be bulldozed. You won't take all of it and let them change who you are as an artist. You have your solid vision and you're confident in who you are, but you know when they might be right and when you have to give a little bit and take that advice. Because I've been, probably both sides of that relationship where maybe I said something and they were like, they took advice that was against their nature, or maybe I said something and they really should have. And it's tough if you don't have that right balance with your team.
Yeah, and it's rapport. And I wanted to add one more thing I did not mention. Make sure that your manager doesn't have too many clients. You want to make sure it's somebody who has the time to give you.
Yeah. Sarah, do you have anything to add?
I think for me, a lot of this too is like understanding the importance of your network and meeting people out there, expanding your network, talking to artists who currently work with the management. Don't be afraid to do that. It's great to ask those questions. Nobody's going to be mad at you for asking around if they truly have your best intentions in mind.
Any good manager would want to be vetted like that, right?
Absolutely.
Like, be like, yes, please, here's the contact information for the artists I work with. Ask them about their experience if you have questions. Like, yeah, it's the transparency thing.
I usually connect all of mine at an event, and I'm like, please get to know each other. I want you to all to know each other and feel confident about this.
Yeah. Amazing. So I've been fortunate enough to become a part of an organization like Youth on Record, which pays me for my time and my performances. And many independent musicians don't have that luxury and look to representation for maybe more flow of income. How many of your artists make 100% of their income from working with you guys, potentially, if that is the case? Or what are their income streams?
Sure. So I also work with artists on a little bit of a smaller level. I would say I have one that's approaching full-time income. It also has 6 members, so that money doesn't go as far.
Totally.
And that's something to consider, about your project and what you want to put into it, knowing it might take a bit longer to start to make that full income. I have one other who does make his full income from it, and he works his butt off. He sits in, he's a session drummer. He does his own thing. He has multiple projects. He's really like done that work and made that work for himself. Otherwise, it can be really, really difficult to try to pursue this as a career while you still need to make money somewhere else to pay your bills. And as much as it sucks, I think there are super creative ways to do that. Maybe you do get involved in other musical projects. Maybe you have a solo act where you make money on the side. I'm going to say it, but a lot of my artists work in the service industry because it is flexible to your needs to go out of town on tour, go to shows, have Fridays and Saturdays off, whatever it is. And then there's other jobs you'll find here and there. I think of one of mine is a cabinet installer, so he naturally has the weekends off. I think there's a lot of wiggle room, and it's more about building that relationship with your other employer where they believe in what you're doing too. You're showing commitment to that job as well, but they understand the flexibility and why you're doing what you're doing.
Totally. Kyle, you can go. Or Amy.
Well, I'm in a similar boat. Most of my artists are very small and incubator size. I have one artist who is fortunate enough, has gotten big enough now to tour nationally and makes a decent amount of income off of his music. And I think the biggest thing, if you're looking to pursue music full time, is finding multiple income streams and really building those out. But the goal is sustainability with art, I think, and understanding as you are starting out that it is not a place you can make a ton of money. Like that is not the goal initially. You know, you do the work. It's like a startup company is kind of how I look at it these days. And when you start a startup company, there's no money in it. You have lots of stock options or whatever, but you don't know if it's going to take off. So I think the time you're spending in it is time you're investing to try to get it to a place where it can be sustainable. In terms of jobs that I think are good for musicians, I would say also remote work is really nice. I have some artists who do remote work and can go tour and then still do their jobs, you know.
Right.
So I think there's a lot of options. It is really hard and has gotten harder in our modern era. And I think it's just kind of changing your mentality with your art where it's not, hey, I'm using this to pay all my bills. Because if that's the mentality you're going in with, it's going to be really hard for you. And you might take gigs that aren't beneficial to growing your career, but might make you a little money in the short term. But that's not necessarily the path to make it a sustainable career.
Yeah. Amy?
I'm fortunate that all my artists at the moment are, making all their money on music. But over the years, when that has not been the case, a big struggle has been, well, we need the money, we're going to take this show, and it's not always the right option. And so I think that's a really strong reason to find a supplemental income while you're starting out, so that you're making your artistic choices based on what's good for you as an artist, not based on getting groceries, which I think is the biggest problem with the music industry. I struggle so much with it emotionally, and I have a regular paycheck, so I'm sure that people who are not getting a regular paycheck out of this are struggling a lot harder. And I would love to see more organizations like Youth on Record around the country supporting up-and-coming artists.
100%. I completely agree.
Yeah, I'm the worst person to ask about this because I work at a record label. So I am constantly asking artists to do work for free. I worked in radio promotion for a long time where I was very often asking artists who were on tour, playing every night, driving all day, to play a show for free on top of the show they were playing in a less fun situation for promotional reasons. So I just feel like I have to say that morally before I talk at all.
I feel like seeing both sides of the coin is important, though, for sure.
Right, because I mean, the thing I said about radio promo when I worked in it is like this will sell tickets next time you were in town. I promise you. Like there's no way, there's no organization I think that knows their local community more than a local public radio station, because they have to fundraise every year, and so they know how to activate a local audience that is interested in art, like engaging in art in their community, which is amazing. Like it's how the only reason I can talk about music is because I like listen to radio growing up with my dad, and he would like be like, listen to this part in this song, you know? And so I think that like, and he doesn't know how to Google a musician right now, but he will text me about new musicians that he heard on the radio. So it's like, yeah, I think that like having that, when you're talking about money, I think, again, listen to them about this, but like I think it's really good to know what you're investing in with the time that you spend, because you shouldn't just do things for free. You shouldn't. You should have your labor as a musician be valued, but you should also know what things are like sweat equity into an investment in your career that will allow you to not necessarily have the biggest budget, but then be successful as a musician when you're having that relationship with people you trust. Like when I could usually explain like this radio interview that someone's doing and have the artist be like, oh, I want to do that because of like this promotion. I'm like, exactly. So like understanding that trust with people who are asking you to do things for free and why you're doing can be a really important part of your career, but can also like make that sustainability go away if you're like, I'm not getting paid enough to do this all the time. So.
Right. Yeah, and the music industry has changed so much over the past 20 years. And like we've touched on stuff like TikTok and streaming a little bit. And I'm curious, being on, like working in the industry and like the backstage part of it, what do you guys anticipate the industry will be changing into in the next 20 years, and what do you hope for? Let's start with Sarah.
Yeah. Let's.
I think you can look at trends and what's happened in the past 20 years all you want, and it's nearly impossible to know what this landscape is going to look like in another 20 years. I mean, it's changed tremendously since last year, you know,
right.
And other altering things like the COVID pandemic changed things a lot. It's super hard to anticipate long-term change in the music industry. I do think doing your research, making sure you're informed, looking out for what the trend makers are doing and what you're seeing on socials, what you're seeing on TikTok, what you're seeing in the news can help you to be quick to evolve with the current changes that are happening. And if you want to do something totally different and groundbreaking, go for it. You could be the one making that change. I hope that, you know, we can live in a world at some point where independent venues don't struggle. Artists are paid fairly. You know, the arts are held to a standard that they were in ancient Greece and Rome, where it was one of the most important things you could do with your life.
That's ideal, yes.
Yeah. And I think that maybe we're seeing a shift in that way more so than it has been over the past decade or so, just because like all of us with all of our voices, all of you with all of your voices are making that change. But that's what it's going to take too. It's impossible.
Amy?
If I can be a little bit optimistic,
100%.
because I think that's the only way to be right now.
I agree.
I think there's a good chance that we're moving in a direction very slowly and incrementally, that things are more inclusive, that artists as workers are higher valued, that our country as a nation is finding more strength in unions, and we're seeing it come into the music business, and that there's a generation coming up who sort of knows their value and is demanding to be seen for it. And I'm very hopeful that that is a movement that continues and is not squashed as it goes.
Yeah.
I totally agree with you. I think socially, I think the kind of elephant in the room is technology. And I think art is at a very crazy, that's the word I'm looking for. It's about to go through very major changes. I think AI and the technology that it brings with it is going to totally transform art as we know it in good and bad ways. And I think I'm excited in the sense that I think there's things you're going to be able to do with art that you've never been able to do before. in terms of like simulating music videos and stuff like that. But also it's a very scary time too, because capitalism and just getting paid fairly for your work and not having people rip you off.
Totally.
So I think it's we're kind of headed towards like the Wild West again. I do think one place that art can keep being a sustainable career is in merch and physical media, like cultivating your fan base and really getting people who want to buy a vinyl from you and doing special releases that kind of people reject a little bit as stuff gets more virtual. So they look to physical objects for comfort, I think, a little bit.
Totally, yeah.
So I think that's kind of a safe space, hopefully, for artists.
Amazing.
I think that is not going to change is that like people really want to listen to music, and I think that's a thing that is like I think is in a lot of like speculating about the future of the music industry is a thing that gets overridden, is that like people want this thing to exist, and sometimes they are bad at supporting it, but sometimes they're really good at supporting it. And I think that those are like I'm kind of like against making predictions of like this is what this is going to be, but like people love hearing music that people who make it care about, and they're pretty smart about like what is important to you as an artist when you're making the music, and they can pick up on those things. And like I think that those things are why so many people fall in love with music and then become people who are like, how do I go see this artist? How do I want the t-shirt. I want to talk to people about this band. Is they're pretty good music lists, like appreciators of music. And it's not, you can look at Spotify stats and you can feel bummed out about music so easily and often. But I like the optimism. I'm so happy to hear that from you all, because I feel it too, where I'm like, this thing is not going away. We just have to make sure that artists can still do this thing. And yeah, so I'm passionate about that. And if you want to talk about unionization of music, please talk to me after this. I'd love to talk to you.
That would be amazing. Yeah. Thank you all for being so insightful and thoughtful, answering my questions for you guys. And yeah, for the last bit of the interview or panel, we are going to open up the floor to the audience. Is there any audience questions? Yeah.
So kind of throughout, I think I've been building really good relationships with talent buyers on my own, and on my other things, selling more and more tickets, building more of a fan base, getting bigger shows, playing bigger venues. But my question, like with representation, like the pay stays the same, and I don't think I'm in a career or a spot. It's hard for me to negotiate that pay, I feel like, because I don't necessarily want to tarnish a relationship when they're giving me like bigger opportunities. Do you think that I should just kind of suck it up and have that conversation just like I would in a normal corporate position, saying like asking for a raise, I guess, or is that what more the representation is for?
I'm going to repeat the question just for recording purposes. So basically, how to have the conversation about pay with bigger companies or
Just more like talent
buyers and booking agents and stuff like that.
Are you concerned that if you had an agent booking that show, your fee would not go up and you'd just be paying 10% to the agent?
I would say that like I would want someone to be sort of negotiating for me versus myself, because I don't necessarily.
That's their job.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Is that's like do you think that's necessary as an artist to have that person, or do you think as an artist they should maybe have that conversation on their own with the promotion companies or talent buyers?
If you're doing that here and you're doing it successfully and you're happy with where you are, then you don't need representation. If your idea is to continue to grow and you've reached a point where you don't have the relationships to do that, that's the point of representation. If you have reached regional heights and you're like, look what I did all by myself, but I need somebody who knows people on the West Coast and I haven't done that yet, that's where an agent will come in and you can say, I can pull this many tickets in all these different markets. Look, I've done this all by myself. I need help. And then they see all what we've been saying, that you did that work, you built your community, and now they have a structure to build on top of.
Perfect.
Add a little bit. You booked me, so
Yeah.
Somebody-
Should you pay him more money? Yeah.
So having been on both sides, because I do booking as well, and I'm a promoter for AEG, I think the tricky thing is figuring out how much you can get out of a gig, and what is the worth here. When you look at something, I'm going to use an example like a support slot, right? You have a touring band who may have set a support budget, and they say, hey, we've got $250 to give to this support act. And then the support act, you hit up this band you're super excited about, you've been championing them, and you're like, hey, I want you to open this awesome touring show, sold out, whatever, and I have $250. That's where there's an opportunity cost, right? And some artists will say, no, my rate is $1,000. I'm only going to do this show for $1,000. And they might say, the artist who's touring is like, okay, let's go on to the next artist. And at that point, it's like, oh, did we just miss a really good opportunity? Should we have just done that show? And that's something you have to decide for yourself. But a good agent or manager is going to be able to negotiate those conversations for you and come to the best conclusion about what you really need to do in that situation. Or if you're doing like a local gig, how much money is there really that's fair to get out of that venue? If you're playing in a 100 cap room, what's the maximum amount of money you can really make in that room that's realistic?
So, and what you're talking about is the skill of negotiation that a professional who does this and understands all the pieces of it is doing for their job, and they do it actively, and they kind of know how to do that very effectively. And if you want to learn that skill, that is not something you need to hire someone for necessarily when you're getting going.
Yeah.
But it takes the understanding of the context of the show. Like your money, like being able to walk away, being able to say, no, I don't want to do this for this money. It takes understanding all of those pieces to negotiate effectively for yourself. And that's what we were talking about earlier with the teams, where it's like, if that's something you want to dig into, and you feel comfortable and like excited about learning on the minutia of it, and then getting in there and being able to advocate for yourself in that way, hell yeah, do it. Hire somebody else to do social media for you, and then you negotiate those things for yourself. But if you're asking that question, it already feels like you're like, I'm unsure of this, I don't necessarily want to be in that position, then that kind of gives you that indication that you're like, maybe somebody else should be doing this for me.
Opportunities definitely outweigh, and the exposure definitely outweighs the extra $100. I'm not trying to tarnish that, but there's a small part of me that's like, I know that I could be getting paid more, and it's like almost kind of a...
And that's where you have to decide, it's that opportunity, what is more beneficial for me as an artist at this point in time? Am I trying to build this relationship with this person? Do I want to open for this band, gain new fans? Or do I need $500 to shoot a music video, And then also you look at what is your ammo, from past shows, ticket sales like we were talking about, or momentum you have around town, or whatever it is. You want to have your ammo ready to go to make your case in those situations, and be able to support it with evidence and be like, hey, I sold 200 tickets last time. Can you pay me an extra $1,000 for this show?
Sorry to cut off this conversation so early, but I was given like a 5-minute marker more than 5 minutes ago. Yeah, thank you guys so much for being here, Sarah, Amy, Kyle, and Harlan. Very insightful conversation, and I've had a really great time. I appreciate your input on all my questions and the audience questions. And thank you guys for being here. I hope you got a lot of insight into what you need to learn as an artist. And yeah, we value your feedback. Please give us your input by filling out our wellness survey and impact survey. And remember, you can soon rewatch all Impact Days content on the Youth on Record YouTube channel. Thank you.